My name is Amanda Gutterman. I am Chief Marketing Officer at Consensus, and I'm here because I'm on a mission to increase the adoption of Ethereum and Ethereum products. And the way that I do that is through marketing. So how I'm defining marketing today is how to build a brand, how to grow your audience, and how to acquire users, and all of the different activities that you do in your business in order to accomplish those things. One thing I've noticed from helping support a lot of Ethereum projects and from being at ETH Denver, being at DevCon, is that a lot of the teams in the Ethereum space are led by first-time technical founders. And that is totally awesome. But it often means that the people leading Ethereum-based projects don't necessarily have experience with marketing or training on how to do marketing, which is also fine, because I found that it's easier to teach an engineer how to do marketing than it is necessarily to teach a marketer how to do engineering. So I think folks who are engineers, folks who are building blockchain products, I think you can really get a lot of value out of marketing. And I think even here, we've seen a lot of projects leaving money on the table by not doing marketing. For example, just in sessions today, I noticed speakers coming onto the stage and not saying, "This is my name, and this is the name of my product." You know, that's a moment that you can really use to get in people's minds. And then something simple like having the name of your product on your slides, having the name of your project up there so that when people are taking photos, maybe they haven't taken a photo of your first slide that has the logo and name on there, but if you put it on every slide, chances are if people take a photo, they're going to actually remember the name of your project. And so these things sound super simple, and they sound a lot simpler than the really complex challenges that a lot of our founders are solving in the Ethereum space. But there are ways to actually optimize the investment that you're making and to actually get across and be memorable to your audience. So this is a cartoon making fun of marketers, which is richly deserved. And that's a question people ask. Why do we need marketing? And when I joined Consensus, I was the first marketer in the company. And before that, there were a lot of technical leaders. There were starting to be some business people, and we were mostly focused on R&D. And when I joined, we were catalyzing a transition from a really exploratory R&D focus to actually having some products that had real users and starting to tell our story a lot more publicly and to tell the story of Ethereum. And I was able to build a team and to get that message out further because I was able to convince some of the early Consensus folks that marketing was valuable. And part of how I did that was with examples, because the dustbin of history is full of amazing technologies that failed to get users and ended up not being adopted. And one of those examples is Betamax. You can have a superior technology that ends up losing because it loses the adoption game. So just because something works and just because something's exciting, which I know a lot of the projects are in the Ethereum space, doesn't mean it's actually going to win. And marketing is key to winning. Ironically, though, marketing has not marketed itself well in the Ethereum space, which has led to a lot of misconceptions. A lot of the projects we see that are successful feel, whether they're on Ethereum, whether they're on blockchain or not, they can feel like they succeeded without any marketing. And that is the mark of amazing marketing, especially when you're marketing to audiences that don't like marketing. But everything is marketing, and we'll talk about that a little more. The other misperception is that marketing is something you do when you don't really have the goods. It's for scammy ICOs. It's about giving people inflated expectations, and then they're going to be let down in the end. And then the other misconception is my target users are developers. Developers maybe don't like marketing or are perceived as not liking marketing. I mean, no one enjoys being advertised to and admitting that they made a buying decision because of an ad. But there's a misperception that you can't do any kind of marketing activity because your target user are devs. But the reality is that marketing isn't just about ads. It's about a wide range of activities that help your business grow, and that high-quality projects will fail if they don't attract users, no matter what the quality of the technology is. So whether you're a B2B product, B2C, or a B2D looking to reach developers, it's all about knowing your audience and marketing to them in a way that they'll appreciate and knowing what that is. So this is a quote by a guy called Ryan Holiday, who wrote an amazing book. And if you are a founder or someone who's looking to develop a marketing skill set, this book, Growth Hacker Marketing, is excellent. I highly recommend it. And he's talking about the transition from when marketing used to be mostly physical to mostly digital. And he explores that transition in full. And what he says is marketing has always been about the same thing: who your customers are and where they are. And that holds up completely in the blockchain space. So in this talk, I'm going to go over how to figure out who your audience is, how to reach them on different channels, how to figure out what your key metric for marketing is, how to develop messages that resonate with that audience. And then I'm going to talk about a few of the particularities of blockchain marketing, but there really aren't that many, because at the end of the day, it's about who your customers are and where they are, whether you're marketing a blockchain project or pretty much anything else. So the first thing to do for your product or your project is to know your audience. And a lot of founders claim to know their audience, but haven't ever met their audience in person. They haven't done true market research. You should get to know your audience in person and at scale. That can mean conducting live interviews. It can mean having them fill out surveys. I think in-person interactions with your users is essential to really understanding your market. Then you can also reach them online, which is a lot more scalable, but I would definitely recommend in-person as well. And you can reach them online with surveys, and you can reach them inside your product or inside other products they use. So if you already have a product that's getting X amount of users, you could have a survey within that product and make it optional or make it not optional and get a ton of data that way. So you have all these different opportunities at your fingertips for actually meeting your audience, online or offline, and getting that user data. And you want to use that data to build an audience profile. And this sounds a little bit creepy, but believe me, Facebook and Google know way more about you than this. And you're just trying to serve your customer here, not do surveillance or get info they don't want to share with you. So these are the things you want to ask them. Where do they live? How old are they? What do they do for work? Where do they get their information? What do they do for fun? What do they care about? Do they have any strong views? Are there things that particularly turn them on or off? And what you're really trying to determine here is, what do people pay attention to? Because marketing is all about getting a piece of a pie, and that pie is finite, and that pie is made of people's attention. So if you get all this information, you can get a pretty good sense of where someone is focusing their gaze over the course of their day, over the course of their life, and those are the places where you can reach them, and you can understand what kind of messages to reach them in those places from some of this cultural context that you gather. So once you know this kind of information about them, you want to figure out the actual channels that you're going to use to reach them. And we're actually at one of them right now. Events is a channel that you can use to reach people. Video, so that's television, and also things like YouTube, other places people consume videos. In product, that's something people forget about all the time, that if you already have a product that people are using, you can use it to advertise something else that you want them to use, or a new feature. Publications, so that comes in two varieties. You can either earn media, which means getting a journalist to cover your story, and there are very particular ways to do that, or you can publish things yourself. And oftentimes, having a journalist publish your story or some kind of third-party validation will actually help your story go further. But I usually recommend doing a mix of generating your own content and also getting the validation of having third parties like journalists validate your product by covering it. Environmental. This is something people forget about a lot in digital, but billboards, subways, these things are real. Airports. It was actually interesting. During DevCon, I noticed that a couple blockchain projects were advertising in the airport in Prague, and I thought that was amazing. Like, if you know that your community are Ethereum developers and all of them are landing in Prague in a 24-hour period, that's an amazing, isolated spot where you can advertise, and it probably won't even be that expensive. And only a couple companies thought of it. Search, so that's obviously Google. It's also Yahoo and Bing, I guess. And DuckDuckGo, might as well. Audio, so in our space, we market a lot in podcasts. We find that a lot of our audiences, especially developer audiences, love podcasts. And we're able to reach them there with ads that they enjoy listening to. And then there's radio. I mean, in our space, there aren't as many radio listeners, but depending on what market you're going after with your blockchain project, it could be a radio listening audience. So social media, a lot of people in the Ethereum developer community are allergic to paid ads and don't necessarily like that there's a paid ad going up. At least that's what I thought. But there are some situations in which they respond positively to a paid ad. So you need to be able to understand your audience and how they'd actually feel about that. And then organic social media, just the social media coming through your feed, the channels that people are on, figuring out what those are and making sure that you get shared on them. Email, obvious, and events. Events is tricky because it's difficult to measure the ROI that you get out of events. So one thing I often recommend when you do an event is to have a very clear conversion point. So when you have all these people at an event or when you attend an event, what specifically do you want to get out of it? And how can you put numbers to that so you can actually check whether you're getting the ROI you wanted from an event? Because oftentimes things like event sponsorships, things like event attendance are costly. And for an early stage startup in particular, you want to make sure you're actually getting your money's worth. So a lot of times people come to me wanting to do marketing. They've already figured out who their audience is. They've already figured out how they're going to reach them, but they don't know exactly what they want. So you don't just do marketing in a vacuum. You don't put out press releases in a vacuum. You don't put out paid advertising in a vacuum. It all has to coalesce into a campaign around a key metric. And your key metric is the thing you really care about. It's the reason why you're doing marketing in the first place. And in order to actually launch a campaign, you have to be very specific about what this thing is and about exactly how you're going to measure it. So here are some frequent ones. Do you want people to join your community? That's a really common one. Getting people to a landing page where they enter their email address or where they are prompted to follow you on Facebook, follow you on Twitter, whatever it is, Minds. Do you want their email for your email newsletter? Do you want them to come to your job listing website and apply for a job? Do you want them to use or download your product? Visit the site, download the product? Do you want them to make a purchase? So getting really clear and crisp about exactly what you want is completely necessary before you actually mount a marketing campaign. Once you know what your key metric is, that's when the hard part comes in because it's about the actual message. And this is a quote from my other favorite marketing guru, Seth Godin, and he wrote a wonderful book called This Is Marketing that I would also recommend to folks who want to learn about marketing. And the quote is, "People do not buy goods and services, they buy relations, stories, and magic." And I think in this space, we underestimate the degree to which how people feel is important to whether or not they use a product or whether they're willing to interact with the community or not. To give you an example, MetaMask, which is in our portfolio at Consensus, they're part of our mesh. They're not a company that's done a ton of paid marketing. They're not trying to reach users on paid channels, but they have done marketing in terms of this definition, because look at that cute fox. Don't you want to interact with that cute fox? don't you want to interact with the buffacorn? I mean, these are all parts of marketing. They may not be paid ads that are assaulting your eyes, but they are concepts that resonate with people and make you feel a certain way, and that feeling is going to make you more likely to take the type of action that that product would want you to take. Seth Godin in this book gives a couple of great examples. One example of this is yo-yos. So do you know why yo-yos are banned in a lot of schools? And this is something he said in an interview, because of what happened last time. And what happens is sometimes you get a kid who brings a yo-yo to a school, and it's all okay. And the kid just, does his yo-yo, everybody ignores him, then he goes away. But sometimes, if it's the right kid who brings the yo-yo to school, then the next day you'll have 3 kids who bring yo-yos to school, and the next day you'll have 15 kids who bring yo-yos to school, and the next day you'll have, 1,000 kids with yo-yos in school, and no one will be doing any schoolwork. They'll just be doing yo-yo. And so finding the right point, finding the right insertion point, having the right person incept an idea into a group of people is really essential. And you see that with all kinds of products in our world. I don't know if you've seen these Supreme t-shirts. There are a lot of teenagers wearing them, but it's basically a marked up t-shirt. It costs 2-3 times as much as a normal t-shirt. And the reason people are wearing it is because of a feeling that they're getting of in-group, out-group inclusion. They want to be like a certain person that started a trend in their school maybe, and they're willing to undertake a certain set of behaviors in order to achieve a certain type of feeling. And that applies everywhere. So your message, that's what your message does. And it should do it credibly, and it should do it honestly. But when you have your audience profile, you have your channel, you know how you're going to reach them, you have your key metric, you know how you're going to measure success with your campaign. It's all about crafting your message. And these are questions you want to ask yourself when you're crafting a message. And at the end of the day, what you want to do is say whatever thing you need to say that is true, that will entice your audience to do the thing you want them to do. And that thing is the thing that moves the needle on your key metric. So figuring that out, figuring out how you're going to measure it, and iterating until you actually have it right, that's what your message is. It's the thing that crosses the chasm between the audience and the channel and actually achieving your key metric. So we've gone through audience profiling, channels, developing a key metric, developing a message. Your call to action is the thing in your message that is the actual conversion point. So if you want people to sign up for your email newsletter, the call to action is where it says sign up here with the link. Your call to action, if you want someone to make a purchase, is the buy button on your screen or whatever it is. And every message needs to have a call to action so you can actually make sure it's helping you move the needle on your key metric, which is your ultimate goal. So once you've done those things, you're now in full campaign mode. And what you want to do to understand your campaign is to establish a baseline. So establishing a baseline, let's say you are trying to grow your email newsletter, and let's say every day you usually get 5 new subscriptions from people who are coming to your website. That's your baseline, 5 new subscriptions per day. So you want to make sure that you're setting a target that is going to move your performance away from your baseline. So you're going to you have to understand the baseline, and once you have that, you can set a target. You can collect data on how your campaign is actually doing, and there are monitoring tools that are specific to whatever your key metric of choice is. And then you're going to iterate and experiment, particularly with your message and your choice of channel, based on whether it's working. Are you hitting your target? Are you doing better than your baseline? And you're going to learn that from your data, and you're going to repeat that process. So one thing you'll notice is that I haven't said the word blockchain very much in this presentation, because I think marketing a blockchain project is actually very similar to marketing pretty much anything else, in that it's all about audience, channels, key metrics, and messaging. But there are some challenges that are particular to blockchain marketing some of which I think are true and some of which I think are false. One misperception that I often get from blockchain founders is that marketing my blockchain project is extra difficult because I need to explain how blockchain works to my users. A lot of people think that understanding how blockchain works is a prerequisite to being able to use a blockchain product. And in some cases, with certain kinds of developer tools, that's true. But generally, with consumer, with B2B, it just isn't the case most of the time. And it isn't actually on you. So I'm going to officially absolve you of responsibility for explaining how blockchain works to your users. Most people don't know how the internet works, couldn't describe TCP/IP. Most people couldn't describe how a light bulb works, and that doesn't prevent them from being able to use those things. So unless understanding how the blockchain works is a real prerequisite to using your product, I wouldn't focus on it or think that you have to do that first. It's an unnecessary burden. What I would do is explain what it does. So how something works is different from what something does, and I do encourage blockchain founders to explain what blockchain does. How does this make your product better? How does this make it usable? How does it, provide functionality that you wouldn't be able to get from somewhere else? Maybe it's decentralized, maybe it's peer-to-peer, whatever it is. Another question I get a lot is, should I use the word blockchain? And that's been a really fraught question. You've had companies like Long Island Iced Tea change their name on their stock ticker to Long Island Blockchain, and their stock took off last year. Obviously, they are a beverage company, not a blockchain company, so that wasn't really very accurate. And then Kodak, you saw them get a lot of attention, and you saw their stock price go up last year because they had a cryptocurrency, and they were using the word blockchain a lot. So people ask me this. What I usually say is, are you actually using a blockchain? Don't use the word blockchain if you're not actually using one. And then, does your audience care? Do they want to use a product that's on a blockchain? Sometimes they do. Sometimes that's something that resonates with them. But maybe they don't. A lot of users just care about the value proposition to them. Do your investors care? You might want to put it on an investor deck if you're using a blockchain and your investors care about blockchain. If they don't, then I guess you'd probably still want to explain to your investors that you're building on a blockchain. And then the other question is, are we there yet? So maybe someday we're not going to use the word blockchain very much at all because blockchains are so ubiquitous. We don't say that something's an internet company every time we hear about a company that's on the web. And once blockchain is really everywhere, we might hear the word a lot less. So just to finish up, here are some things that I think are real blockchain challenges. And these are things to think about. And they are things that I work on a lot with founders that want to market blockchain products. Solving a problem for users, especially early in the space, a lot of products focused on building something really cool as opposed to building something that solved an actual problem in the real world. So that's been a challenge historically in our space. Usability is another one. Can the people in your target audience actually use your product? Are they technically capable of using your product? That's an interesting question. And then even if they're capable of using it, is there too much friction? Are there too many steps? Are they falling out of it because it's not really easy for them to use, or because there's a competitor that's easier? Another one, and this is philosophical, is blockchain projects not collecting user data. And that's a problem because it's hard. It makes it harder than a project that does collect user data to do really great audience profiling. But a lot of blockchain products philosophically don't want to do this, which makes total sense to me. But there are ways to go around it and be able to still understand your audience well. But it is a setback. And then in blockchain marketing, platform bans. So the word blockchain, the word Ethereum, you can really have a lot of trouble putting a paid campaign behind those on platforms like Facebook. We also saw MailChimp threatening to get rid of blockchain marketing. They actually didn't. So we're seeing platforms ban blockchain advertising outright. And so that's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity because at the same time, you get a bunch of new blockchain-based marketing channels that people are going to use because they aren't able to use some of the traditional channels. So in a lot of these, there are opportunities as well as challenges. So that's some food for thought. Thank you so much. This is my email address. Our team really wants to support the Ethereum ecosystem. And if we can help you, and if we can lend our blockchain marketing expertise to help with your questions or your project, please just shoot me a note. Thank you so much.